last time and I never got to do a picture, so then I didn't have anything fun to share on social media. So I'm going to do this right at the beginning.
Oh, Libby's going to take a screenshot. Well done. Morning, guys. Welcome to our second session of Wednesday. Really exciting. This is going to be a fascinating discussion, I think, on one of the things I'm really intrigued by is how we change our behaviours, because everything about taking eco action is kind of behaviour change, and I'm sure there's loads of really complicated psychology that I am completely unaware of that goes on behind it. But I think if we can have a little bit of a better understanding about that, not only will it help us to change our own behaviours, hopefully, but I'm also really intrigued as to how we nudge and poke other people a little bit to change their behaviours, and how we do that in a way without getting punched in the face or alienating them, or having that eye roll that you get whenever people sort of see you approaching. So really excited to have this one. The chat, as ever, guys, is in the right hand side there, and you're all making good use of that, full use of that at the moment. If you've got specific questions for the guys on the panel, there's the ask a question button at the bottom, just so the questions don't get lost in the chat. And we'll do our very best to get to them at the end. But let's dive straight in with getting you our very gender imbalanced panel again, Livy. And it's going to be really interesting because we've got Livy and we've got Libby. So I might actually have to say it like that to make it clear who I'm asking. So, but I'm going to go with Virginia first because that's nice and easy too. Yes. You want to introduce yourself to us all?
Yes, I'm Virginia Cinquemani. I'm the director and founder of a company called Green Gorilla, and Green Gorilla does training and coaching for sustainability people, focusing on soft skills. So how to speak to people, how to negotiate, and how to push sustainability in the right direction without being salesy, or how to alienate people, basically try and avoid that. So that's what I do as a day job.
Brilliant. Libby, can you tell us?
Hello. So I specialise in people, particularly people's brains. Why do people do what they do? I've been a big fan of looking at humans as an animal. I'm a vet, but I teach other vets. So I have, for the last few years, been travelling the country, delivering training and practices. And the thing that I've learned over all the years that I've been coaching and training is that it's not about process, it's about the people. If you can get the people to move, you can get them to do a process, but it doesn't matter what process you design and how beautiful it is, you've got to work with the people. So I specialise in those little tweaks and twitches that move people. And there's a lot of data behind that.
Brilliant. Livy, hello. Do you want to introduce yourself?
So my background is... can you hear me?
Yeah, we've got a bit of a delay, I think, but go for it.
So my background is in behaviour change within the events industry. I worked with Shambhala Festival delivering sustainability initiatives there, and got really interested in the behavioural aspects of it, the nudge theory and behavioural economics. Then I went on to study at UE, so I did a behavioural economics, behaviours change MA module, and then I've been delivering behaviour change initiatives with City to Sea and Refill, and I've just launched a online training course on behaviour change in the workplace. So I'm very interested in the structures and the barriers which are not about our conscious mind, but all the unconscious things we're doing all the time.
Brilliant. I love. I have to say, I'm quite intimidated by all three of you, but I'm going to pretend that I'm not. Why is behaviour change so difficult? Like, why do we seem to find changing our habits or whatever? Why is it so difficult? Livy, let's go with you first because you were last with your intro.
So there's lots of things that motivate our behaviour. One, our brains have got lots of habits and processes that we're doing all the time. So we're not very conscious, we're not very rational, and we care really about what other people think. And also there's lots of structural things that actually affect our behaviour. So it's not enough to say, I'm just going to do this. It's understanding what are the things in place that make it harder. So I would say it's three different things. It's our brains, it's our sociology, and it's the things around us.
Brilliant. That may have made it really hard for anyone else to add anything to it, but let's give it a go. Libby, have you got anything to add to that?
Of course. It's my favourite topic, Jen. It's the best game in the world, this. Yeah. Everything Libby said, plus I think there's a really interesting, just touching back on the gender topic that we talked on yesterday, you know, people are very keen to do those things that get rewarded by society. And at the moment, there isn't enough reward for people to change. There's all this fear. There's a whole lot of fear-based behaviours going on, but there aren't enough reward-based behaviours. And particularly for men, it sometimes conflicts with their gender identity, which is a huge driving force for keeping people in a set of behaviours. And staying true to your in-group behaviours and not performing out-group behaviours is something the human animal does really, really well. Because as Libby said, you know, we need that. We are pack animals. We really are. We're a human animal, and we've got to remember that.
Virginia, you've got the tricky job of going last now.
I only wanted to add that change is scary anyway. Any type of change, any type of change to your routines. There is an element of unknown that we're all scared of. Whether it's good or bad, there is always a moment of, am I going to cope with it? Is it going to be good for me? Is it going to make me fit in with my peers, as you correctly said, guys? So purely the element of change is sometimes daunting in itself, because we are adaptable, but we try and keep our habits going, whether they're good or bad. So in itself, a change is a problem.
I think my very kind of crude understanding of that is that, you know, everything I've read is that, you know, our brains want us to stay safe, and the known is safe, and anything unknown feels unsafe. So even if it's really, really crap, they'll keep us in the known safe bit, because that just makes our brains, our sort of lizard reptilian brains.
Otherwise, we'll be all illuminated and doing the best for ourselves all the time, which doesn't happen, of course.
Yeah.
And if I can add to that, Jen, there's something really powerful in that, because my background, by the way, I'm very much a classicist, behaviouralist. I did neural mechanisms of behaviour as a degree whilst training to be a vet, and so I always go back to that.
Such an overachiever, Libby.
It's Cambridge. They make you do it. I didn't want to. I genuinely, I was like, can I not do this bit, please, guys? Because I just want to be a vet. I just want that bad. But actually, it sort of set my feet on a completely different path. It's really interesting. But the neural part of what you just said, Jen, is so powerful, because we have got this little sentry in our brain, and its job is just to help us survive. It's not to thrive. It's literally standing on the bridge of the ship going, watch out, over there, you know, and it's flagging up all these danger signals for us. Massive floods of chemicals get released to prompt anxiety. Anxiety is designed to make us choose, to make us feel this way or that way. And that's where everyone has been living in a lot of, you know, this crisis we're in at the moment. There's a lot of that going on. And that means our thrive bits of the brain physically shut down. So we lose blood supply to creativity, forward planning, all those things that climate change needs, all those things that sustainability needs. As soon as we're in fear, as soon as we're in survival mode, we don't do future forward.
Yeah. And interestingly, a couple of you have touched on the sort of societal drivers behind our behaviours. So for me, that brings up a bit of a chicken and an egg question. Do you know, like how can we change? Do we need to wait for society to change before we see the sea change that we need, or are we the sea change that drives the change in society? How does Virginia, I'll let you go first because you were last time.
I don't know if you all seen that video on YouTube of the leader, you know, the crazy guy at a festival that danced by himself, and he looks like a nut, basically a nutter. And little by little, people start joining in. And you need the first follower to create a crowd in a way. And I'm not a scientist of behavior, so correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes you do need to follow your values and just go by yourself, even if that is pushing basically your out of your comfort zone, and try little by little to introduce new things in your life and in the life of others for others to follow. because anything at the beginning, as we said, is scary and is new and is, you know, it's weird even. And then little by that's why, for example, in marketing, you have to send a message at least 7 times, they say, in order for people to start to really registering it and even, you know, agreeing with that. It's a sort of brainwash that you need to do. So if you are a person of values, and if sustainability is one of your values, it takes a bit of effort to actually come out of your shell and show the way for others to follow. And of course, the society helps, and, you know, if help comes from above and governments, etc., that encourages people to do it. But we also need the Greta Thunberg and other people like this that just go for it, and others follow.
Yeah.
That's my view anyway.
Travis talked a little bit about this yesterday, and he did a talk on sort of taking sustainability mainstream, and he talked about, you know, you need the sort of thought leaders who are carving the way, and then, you know, followed by the sort of influencers, and then obviously, as the name suggests, they then influence kind of their followings and things, and that's how it spreads. But Livy, have you got anything to any insights on that? Yeah.
There's a concept from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is the idea that there's 3 people types. You've got pioneers, who are the people who do things because of their values, and then you have the prospectors, who do things because it looks good and it'll be good for them and their appearance, and then you've got settlers, who do things because they're concerned about their safety and their community and what's around them. So if you're generally, there's some tests that you can do online, you can see where you fit in, but generally, if you care about sustainability, you're very value driven, and generally you're a pioneer. So it's about the pioneers doing it first, because they don't care so much what other people think, and then you need the prospectors to then normalize it. So it's a process. So it's important that if you do what you want to do, but it's really interesting looking in your brain and seeing when you're about to do something, the evaluations you make about, what will this person think about me? How's that going? Oh, what are they going to say? And so it's interesting to get into your brain and see that.
Sorry, I was distracted by a Lego arrival.
Beautiful Lego arrival. That was good.
Libby, how about you? This sort of chicken and egg scenario. Do you think there's probably no answer like there is for the chicken and the egg thing?
There is an answer. Unfortunately, it's an uncomfortable one, and it's and I think I mentioned yesterday the campaign where they mocked Roosevelt for having ideas on conservation and sustainability, and they depicted him in an apron, and they use techniques to shame people for the tall poppy syndrome. You stick your head above the parapet, they want to chop you down. And this is where Greta Thunberg has come up against a lot of white male rejection. You know, there's been a huge backlash against that girl because she's not fitting what society wants her to be. She's absolutely diametrically opposed to it. And it takes a certain level of guts to do that. And I don't know that all of us have that in us, but there has to be more activism, more movement, more deliberate outside of society. You know, society at the moment is telling us use fossil fuels. It's telling us all those things. You know, we've cut the subsidy for solar panels. We've cut feed-in tariffs that were incentivizing people. We decimated the solar industry in this country. So there's a lot of messages coming at people that they will subliminally be picking up that actually this isn't very cool, guys, so let's not do it. And so it's going to take an army, it's going to take a groundswell until we've got leaders in position that are equally passionate about it. And, you know, it's like every country's got a Jacinda in it. We're just not electing them.
Yeah. And I think, you know, that is one of the things about, like, Greta, isn't it? And whether that, we could argue about whether that's because of, you know, she said herself she's sort of autistic and things. And so she just doesn't care. Like, I have a, you know, very deep-seated need to be liked. Like, I shy away from controversy and confrontation, and I want everyone to like me and agree with me. But she just doesn't care. She's like, this is the science. I'm not even going to engage with you on arguing about it. These are the facts. This is what it is. You need to, you know, we need to do something about it. And I think, you know, we need that, don't we? Maybe there's an element within the sort of sustainability side that we need to stop. I don't know. Do we need to stop trying to please people, and do we need to just be a bit more blunt? What do you guys think?
I personally think there is a big enough movement around sustainability now and Blue Planet helped with that, and Greta helped with that. That if you find your tribe, you're not alone nutter, like we were saying before. You actually, if you find your tribe, it's much easier to act, and that's why Extinction Rebellion is gained quite a lot of followers last year. Obviously, with the pandemic, everything is at a standstill now, but I think from the purely sustainability point of view, it's actually easier now to do things than it was 20 years ago when I decided to do it. I felt a bit like a price cow at that time for doing something that felt hippie and strange and, and a bit tree-huggery type of thing. So from the sustainability point of view, I'm actually quite optimistic that society is moving that way, but then we need more David Attenborough showing us what the world is going towards. And so when you have people of relevance like celebrities and people that embrace this, but that are also role model for others in society, I think it's easier to embrace ideas like this. And for all of us that are sort of normal people, let's put it that way, just find your tribe. That would be my suggestion. Find your tribe. There are lots of local movements you can join, and by joining up with others, it makes it so much easier to take action, I think.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm just dealing with a snack crisis at the moment. You've got your hands up, go for it.
So I was really interested in why has the sustainability movement not engaged so many people? I get it, I care about this, why don't other people? And what I learned from studying and reading books like George Marshall's Why Our Brains Are Wired Not to Think About Climate Change is that for a lot of people, talking about the environment and polar bears doesn't resonate with them, because polar bears are a long way away and they're not in our immediate vicinity. But talking to people about the things that they actually value is much more powerful. And I always cite the vegan movement and how the showing pictures of dead dogs had a limited crossover. The people talking about their health, and especially lots of buff men in gyms saying that they're now vegan, and the health thing has had a far greater change of behaviour because a lot of people value their health. So I think as a movement, we've got to get better at talking to people about what their values are and not assuming everyone cares about the same thing as health.
That's so true. And if I can add to that as well, there's a question that's come in that links to this, Livy, from Robin. A friend of mine's daughter has climate grief, basically shutting off and feeling hopeless when they hear news or reports on climate change. Has anyone come across people who have also experienced this? And this is really true, because it's about what we can do. And there's this piece called the locus of control, where we've got a central circle that's us, and that's what we can control. Then there's a concentric ring around us of things we can influence. And that is our family, some of our friends, some of our colleagues at work. But then there's that outside zone that we can do bugger all about. And the trick of teaching kids, I think, that's so bloody important right now, is to give a flying one, care about it, but where to put your boundaries so that you don't get personally hurt by what you can and can't control. Because those polar bear images are traumatic. And to me, as a vet, I see them and that wounds me. But to other people, it isn't. And you're absolutely right. Different things resonate with different people, and some of that is inaccessible. But to some kids, if they're in that empath stage, and by the way, we form our model of the world age 7 to 9, we start shaping up what's true. So we work out people are, men are, humans are. We come up with some universal truths that then we live with through the rest of our life. So if you guys think back to when you were 7 or 9, there might be a pivotal moment that you set your model of the world from. And something like climate change, and I don't know about you guys, but I grew up in the 80s where there was acid rain being talked about all the time, the hole in the ozone layer. That became part of my ID, was it's my job to fix this. And I genuinely thought our generation would. I was so hopeful that we would. But people that take it on too much, Robin, people that are feeling it too much, need to understand about what you can control, what you can influence, and what you can't do anything about. But you can go on marches, you can do actions, you can do small pieces within your home, but you can't fix it by yourself. And I think that's a really important distinction for especially kids and us to remember about your superpowers.
Yeah, and that whole thing about, think global, act local, isn't it? And Jo Mosley, who was on our plastics panel, she I can't remember her exact quote. It's something about, I can't change the whole world, but I can change the little bit around me. And I think that's really, really important to remember, isn't it? Is there anything around making sort of sustainable changes that is more difficult than say, I don't know, eating a healthier diet or getting fitter? Is there anything around sustainability that makes it harder for us? I don't know who wants to start with that. Livy, you haven't spoken for a little minute, so we'll let you go. Livy Drake.
So I very much look at behaviours in terms of the structural barriers to us. So the classic one, is plastics. People have to give up plastics. Well, it's really hard because everything's wrapped in plastic. And so we can give ourselves a hard time, but actually it's about the structures. And when we look at things like going to work and how do people get to work and travel, if people have to be there at 9 a.m. And go back, then they can inadvertently end up driving to work, and they need to have a car to do that. But if the structures were changed so that they could come to work at different times, or they could work from home, we can address the sustainability. And quite often the unsustainable behaviours are an accidental byproduct of something. So if we think about going on holiday, no one goes on holiday to destroy the ozone layer and to have a massive carbon footprint. We go on holiday because we want to get out of a rainy country and have some time away from work. But the structure that is in place is the big issue. So for me, it's about understanding that and working out how we can change those structures by things like workations, or having time for slow travel with things like the climate perks, where your employee gives you time away. So for me, it's about the structural issues.
Can I just say, we've done so well for 2 days with very little video invasions, and now we seem to have gone the other way. And look, this is the Lego stage that
that is beautiful.
That's me with my cup of tea.
That's amazing. Well done.
I'm sorry.
You're really lucky. That's a really good interruption. I just had a cat trying to poo in the corner of this room. Going really well. That's great. Great here.
So, Libby, in terms of specifically making sustainability changes, what is it harder and why?
Yeah, it's the risk-reward ratio. So we have to do anything with a risk-reward ratio in our brains that makes sense. Otherwise, we don't do it. So, for example, there's 4 quadrants of your brain. If you think of a grid, and if you take something like go to the gym, there's your subconscious reasons for doing it. So there's, I know I should go to the gym because otherwise, if I go to the gym, there's a whole list of positives, aren't there? So I'll lose weight, I'll be healthy, I won't die of a coronary. There's a whole list of things that we know. But the little sneaky side of your brain next to that is also giving you a secret list of, but if you don't, you get to sit and watch TV and eat Dominoes, don't you? And you can keep drinking this week, where I know you said you were going to stop. And so there's this little subconscious kick as well that tells you of all the positive things that will happen if you don't go. And then there's the other real deep places in your brain, which are, and what are the negatives of going? You get hot, you get sweaty, you don't actually want to go in the first place. It's time, it's money, so your brain comes up with that list as well. And then there's the other list, which is but if I don't go, I will not fit my wardrobe, I'll have to buy new clothes, I will die of a heart attack. So all of these 4 quadrants are active at the same time, and depending on which one has more pain or pleasure attached to it, depends on the behaviour you choose. And so as a human species, we've got this ability to condition our brains for superpowers. So I've run a program called Tame Your Brain, which is all about getting in control of these 4 quadrants and working out which one you want to play in, because it's a choice. Your behaviours are a choice. The trouble with sustainability is there are more negatives attached to doing it than the positives that can be seen or felt in the moment. So to make that really clear, you pick up a bottle, it's bloody easy to just put it in the bin. It's harder to rinse it, put it in recycling, take that to the dump. So there's a risk reward that's imbalanced. It's tipped the other way. So you've got to be bloody strong on your moral compass of knowing why you're doing it. Again, it comes back to that why. It comes back to the why we do everything. And if you've got a strong enough why, if you're strong enough in your, I know I'm doing this because, you'll do it. If you're not, you won't do it. So that's where behaviour comes from, is that understanding of the 4 quadrants and how to leverage up the pain of it so that it forces you to do things, whilst also leveraging up the pleasure so it pulls you towards doing some things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Livy's just dropped off for a minute. I'll see if I can get her back on. I've just been kicked out. Livy, just quickly before we come to Virginia, one of the things that I think is a big issue is that the cause and effect with climate change is so far removed, and I think that's why plastics has had such a sort of resonance, because you can see the cause and effect. You drink a bottle of Coke, you go for a walk and you see a bottle of Coke, or you see some of the horrific videos on thing. But if I leave my TV on standby overnight, it's really hard to connect that with melting. Is that a significant challenge?
It's huge. It's huge. And this uncoupling of the event that happens and then what happens as a result of that is part of the problem, because the huge changes that have been made for the positive often get undone by the next government. So, for example, a Conservative government in 2009, I believe it was, took away. So I used to run a business with my husband on sustainable house building. So there's a thing called Code for Sustainable Homes and BREEAM, and both of those were put in place as law. Anywhere that was built in this country had to meet code regulations, and that was things like it had to have A-rated appliances, it had to have a bike rack, it had to be this far from a bus route. There were things in place. It had to have solar. The Conservative government took that away, so it became no longer an essential requirement of building a house. It became optional. So guess what the house builders did? They immediately went backwards on the 10 years of development that had been pushed towards that, because they couldn't see a reason to do it. All they could see was it cost more money to build a more sustainable house with decent insulation and decent heating. And that's the problem, is that we've got this higher level pushback on what this ground level army are trying to do, and there's no join in the middle. And so these behaviours that we do, we end up feeling aggrieved because we're having to do more effort. And someone just said in the comments, it's convenience. Beth said convenience is a big thing, and that's so bloody true. And it's inconvenient for us to, I get quite cross sometimes. Bloody hell, I'm doing all this. Where the hell are the governments?
Yeah, definitely. Virginia, how about you?
Yeah, I wanted to add to that as well, because I'm an architect, and I worked in the sustainability for the last 15 years. So I know exactly what you mean, and the frustration was huge when that happened for us. But also add that we, as human beings, we're very bad at projecting ourselves in the future. For all the reasons that we were saying at the beginning, because our bodies and our brains are structured to preserve, the status quo and what we're doing right now, and, and keep alive, it's hard for us to plan. Although we are planners and worry about the future, in reality, we don't act for the future. So that's, to me, is a big problem connected to implementing climate change, even for people that are advocates of it, combating climate change, obviously not implementing. But so for people that believe in sustainability and environment and in environmental action, we also feel frustrated. So there is a big gap in between our values and what the world is showing back right now. And climate change is low, so in a way, relatively slow. So yes, so we have, a little, warmer temperatures, etc. But it doesn't seem tragic unless we are caught into a tsunami or whatever else happens as a consequence. So it's hard to see how our little actions today have an impact long term, and that's a big problem for human beings. For me, for example, the hardest thing is the traveling element, because I'm Italian and my family is in Italy, and every time I have to go and see them, and I'm saying I have to go, although I love them, I feel so guilty. It's terrible. But in a way, it's a whole system, like I think Livy was saying, is the system, is the framework that fails us as well. It's not just individual action, it shouldn't be me really to worry about flying. It should be the companies that, that in the first place put the planes there, that should find a quick solution to do it in a sustainable way. Otherwise, I will spend obviously 3-4 days to reach my family, which is not always possible.
And that, again, that's the convenience, isn't it? You can't.
Yeah, it's a balancing game, isn't it? And you can do what you can do in a way as an individual. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes I find as well, when people start talking about, a 1.5 degree rise and a 2 degree rise and a 3 degree rise, I couldn't tell if my bath was 1.5 degrees hotter or my cup of tea was 1.5 degrees hotter. It doesn't seem like a massive thing, does it? And I think maybe that's part of the messaging that needs to change. But I'm really aware we've talked a lot about why it's so difficult to make changes. And now I want to like flip that and talk about how we can make it much easier for ourselves and for others to make changes. So Livy, you disappeared and you're back with us now, which is amazing. So have you got, what are your top tips for making it easier on ourselves to make some of these changes?
So I think one of the things to do is to understand what are those structural issues around particular behaviours. So giving the example of the car, when I moved to Bristol, I had a car and it was really tempting to get in it. So as part of my way of helping my sustainable behaviours, I got rid of the car. I'm now living in Gloucestershire. It makes it very challenging borrowing my mum's car a lot. But for me, it's like, how do you remove those things, those barriers? So in the workplace, I did a really interesting experiment of understanding what was the issue for people to carry a reusable lunchbox to go and get their dinner from a takeaway. And I realised that if you are going to get a takeaway at lunchtime, you don't bring in a reusable lunchbox because you're not thinking about it. You're getting a takeaway because you haven't had time to make lunch. So you're busy, you're not thinking about it. So it's thinking, okay, and when are you going to think about your reusable lunchbox? Probably at the point you get to buy your food. So what I did was put a big box of reusable lunchboxes by the door and let people know that they could just grab one on their way out. So the thing was, it removed the barriers of the having to remember it, having to clean it because you could chuck it in the dishwasher at work. And then there was a team who weren't that into sort of this kind of way of thinking. So what we started to do is get other people to remind them and say, oh, have you got your lunchbox? Oh, yeah, let's get one together. And then we clapped and we're like, yay, go do it. And so we used the idea of social proof and social reward to reinforce the behaviour. So it's understanding, and we're really reward motivated. Like guilt tripping people does not work. So it's kind of infrastructure, social proof, and some feel good.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And that's coming back to this, the gender split we see. There's been a lot of data around the fact that if you reaffirm someone's masculinity, the likelihood of them repeating sustainable behaviours massively increases. And equally, if you threaten someone's masculinity, and there's a problem with that, with sustainability, because it is a gender stereotype, female problem. It's this green femininity stereotype. And things like carrying your own canvas bag was seen as effeminate, and it attracted sometimes even homophobic comments. And making that the norm, making that, again, structural, again, countrywide, there's a fine if you want a plastic bag, yeah, but you've got to pay us. Suddenly people started carrying them, and there was enough reward in that for them to then change their behaviours.
Yeah. Virginia, how about you?
Yeah, a couple of things. I would say committing 100% to something is easier than committing 98%. So if you decide that you want to do sustainability in your own life, for me, for example, my own example is I became vegan a year and a half ago. Some people go through a transition. For me, it was January the 1st, I would be a vegan. Hard, obviously hard, but it's easier than thinking every morning, should I be a vegan or should I not? Should I eat cheese or should I not? So sometimes you need to take that stance and just say, okay, from now, and identify yourself with that. It's also easier. So if you say, I am an environmentalist, it's easier than say, I love the environment. And the more you identify with your values, the better it is to carry them around. And the other thing is making a no-brainer, like, reiterating what Livy was saying. If you prep your environment to do what you want to do, so leave the canvas bag by the door, vegan, don't buy, obviously, cheese and other things that might tempt you, just go for what you choose to do, then it's easier because you don't have to think it every day. You don't go through decision fatigue. You don't, you just do. That's it. You do what you need to do. It takes one day probably to plan it all. And that's it. You know, it's like doing your lunch boxes. You plan it on a Sunday, perhaps, and take your leftovers the day after. I've done that for years, and I didn't even think about it. It wasn't, so the decision you take once, but then you don't keep on making a decision. You've done it. That's it.
Yeah.
Easier probably said than done, but I think in reality, it is easier because you only choose once, and then you keep on going as hard as you can with your values and what you believe is right.
Now I'm gonna maybe play. Libby wants to say as well. I don't know if I'm playing devil's advocate but I think the flip side of that is that you know, some people will find that really, really hard. And that those kind of, you know, the perfectionism and the kind of all or nothing, and I think that can put a lot of people off. And having to label yourself as vegan, actually, can I just decide that 3 times a week I'm going to eat a plant-based recipe? You know, and so for me, that's where the kind of ish comes in, and that sort of allowing people that sort of wiggle room and that thing. And so I don't know if some of that is personality type driven or sort of what that is, but yeah, I can kind of, I mean, like when we did our year buying nothing new, it was very much like that. We are not going to buy anything new. And I needed those boundaries on and needed that lack of wiggle room in order to stick to it. But I think, you know, having some flexibility and stuff maybe allows people to get started, I think, sometimes.
Yes, it came out as rigid in a way. It's actually, for me, for my personality, it makes it easier to stick to that because I don't even think about it anymore. But saying that, when I was in Italy last year in summer, it was so hard to stick to my vegan diet that I said, you know what? For 15 days, I'm going to eat pizza with cheese on it, and I don't think it's going to happen. And nothing is going to happen. So obviously, I've applied it to my own life. It's just that I like now to call myself a vegan because that makes it easier for me to stick to it. That's complicated psychology there, but we're all different, of course. Yes.
Livy, you popped your hands up there, like.
Yeah. So I would say that. And especially when we're talking to other people about these things, that the all or nothing is not helpful. And the idea that you're either a vegan or you're a failed vegan is no good because it's not binary, and it shouldn't be, because actually it would be much better in terms of sustainability if 80% of people ate a lot less meat and dairy than everyone became vegan, because I don't think it's realistic. And I think it's better to, I just think if we sort of say people like it's all or nothing, especially the way that a lot of vegans talk and communicate with people, it actually is quite excluding, whereas it actually, people want to feel included in something, they want to feel part of something, and if it is very militant, then it's kind of quite off-putting. So I think it's about, but also in terms of habits, you need time. And the one thing about being sustainable is not trying to do everything at once. If you decide that you're going to go plastic free, go vegan, I've done it. It's quite time consuming. I did raw vegan. That was the easiest way of doing it. But if you're going, I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, then you get up in the morning, you remember, what am I doing first? So do one thing, embed that, then do another, because habits then become subconscious.
Definitely. And I think that overwhelm is where a lot of people are at the moment, in terms of, you know, we've had Blue Planet 2, we've seen Extinction Rebellion, we've listened to Greta, and we're starting to have this awakening of all the, you know, quite how shit everything is. And then like, well, and there's all this information online and there's all these things, and I don't really know where to start or what to do. So absolutely, that's a big part of my philosophy is, you know, let's pick one thing. Let's go with the low hanging fruit. Let's do one thing and then start and go, you know, on like that. But Libby, how about you in terms of how we can make it easier for ourselves?
So there's two things really. The first is we've got to build in more reward for our brain circuits to light up.
That sounds like chocolate. I just like the sound of that. It's like, that sounds like more chocolate to
pretty
me.
much chocolate is or gin, either's fine. But it's just, it needs to be that there's enough incentive, there's enough, and this is really basic human behaviour, but there's got to be a reason. We've got to have that strong enough why. And the catastrophizing of the climate change is too easy to do, because it is a nightmare. You know, we're looking at a hideous situation in our planet. And so our brains that are aware of that are screaming at us, what the hell? You know, the house is on fire. But at the same time, we have to live our daily lives. And we do have to continue with the structures that are in place. We do have to use those things that are still commonly done. I still drive a diesel car, for example, because at the time, the government was saying that was fine. You know, that's okay. Suddenly we're here now, we're going to be penalised for driving diesel cars. And you're like, hang on, you told me diesel was better? Like, I know I'm going back 10 years, but you told me that was okay. And so there's this horrible dichotomy between what we're wanting to do and what we're actually able to do at the moment. So we need to build and reward. That's the first thing. And yes, that could be chocolate, but you've got to give yourself small steps. So part of any change management is about knowing those North Star metrics along the way. How do I know I'm getting it right is the way we need to look at it. How do I know I'm doing the right things? And yes, there's a welter of information, but pick some reliable sources and study them and pick your items and then do those and only do those. So, for example, for my first child, which in my wisdom, I thought, you know, I'll just pop out a baby while I'm at Cambridge University training to be a vet. It's great. Like this extra degree they're making me do, I don't want to do it, but despite them, I'm going to have a baby in that year because I'm getting a bit old. So I popped out a baby. And in my wisdom, I also thought I'm going to use reusable nappies because, you know, the planet. And so I built that into my life as being the thing that I could do at the time. And it's one of those pieces where you have to set yourself up. And I think, as Virginia said, you know, you've got to almost decide for yourself what your all or nothing is and do that and do it really well and just take away the possibility. I didn't have any disposable nappies in the house, so it stopped me being able to use them. And as a consequence, I then had that nappy kit there for my next children. And it's all of these little pieces that you can put in place for you, but you have to do something that's practical for you. And that's different for everybody. And that's part of the problem because there is no one fits all.
Yeah, and you know, even on the nappy front, Laura's doing a talk for us later at 12:30 actually. But you know, like I used reusable nappies for our two after we got over the kind of rabbit in the headlights first 8 weeks with the first one, and but it didn't work with either of them at night. So we used disposable nappies at night, and so you know, just remembering that it's okay to be imperfect because you know every disposable nappy is one less in the thing. And one thing that I found really helpful. Because you know we're all very aware of reusables and things, but I don't know if any of you saw, like Hubbub did a survey and saying that like 69% of us have got reusable coffee cups, but only 1 in 6 of us remember to take it out with us. And so actually trying to sort of hook habits onto existing habits. So someone suggested, which I'd love to be able to claim as my idea, you know, there's little reusable bags with the hook on, put that on your house key so you cannot leave the house without it. Because I'm really good at taking my shopping bags when I went and did the supermarket shop. But, you know, when you pop into Lidl's for a pint of milk and then you're that person juggling all the things at the till, you know, so things like that. And, you know, maybe you need to put a Post-it on your phone to say reusable coffee cup because you're always going to pick up your phone when you go out. So trying to just make it as easy as possible for ourselves. We could chat about this all day. But one thing that I really want to touch on is how we influence other people's behaviours, how we can do that in a kind, compassionate, non-alienating way. Because I think, you know, that's really important. And I think a lot of people at this festival are already a certain way down their journey. And one really, really important thing we need to do is bring other people on board with that. So any ideas around that? Livy, Drake, do you want to start again?
So I think with that, so one is understanding what motivates other people and talking to them in their language, not talking in our language, not talking about sustainability if it doesn't, and don't threaten them and don't talk about threats. Talk about the positives and what you can gain from it. So the great thing about the things I really enjoyed about going vegan was all the things I got to create and all the recipes and all the fun I had. So rather than talk about what people are taking away, it's what you're gaining from your life. So slow travel, what do you gain? Amazing experiences on trains. You know, so it's about reframing the conversation and never shaming people because they're experiencing something called cognitive dissonance, which actually hurts your brain. It's when you're not living, you're not living how you think you are, or your values are different. So if someone says you're a bad person, no, I'm not. So they're just going to switch off from you. So it's really important to really positive, and also just look about what's the infrastructure that's the barrier to those behaviours. And just on the coffee cups, I'm working with a couple of organisations who are looking to develop reusable coffee cup schemes where you pick up the cup, you use it, you drop it off somewhere and it gets washed.
Yeah.
Working within those things and not, the whole thing about having to remember it leaking your bags. There are serious issues with going reusable, and it doesn't work in certain ways, so we have to understand that.
Yeah, just to pick up on a point there, you said it's really important we speak to people in their language. How do we tune into that? How do we find out what their language is?
If I can chip in with that bit, that's really, really fascinating, because there's like these different brain types, and there are 4 classic brain types. I don't know if any of you have done psychometric profiling, but it's something I do with all my clients I work with. So I do executive coaching, I go in and train companies and vets practices, and psychometric profiling is so fascinating. And there's something you guys were saying earlier about, is all or nothing suitable for everyone? No, it's not, depending on your brain type. So the profiling tools come out, and you can use any tool. There's Myers-Briggs, there's HBDI. I personally use Talent Dynamics. That's the one I've found is most accessible for people, or Insights. And it teaches you which things are important to which profile type. So the dynamos at the top, the creator energies, their keyword is what's next. And these people are really fast, and they're always the start of a project. Just don't ask them to finish it, because they're rubbish at that. and then down the bottom, you've got tempo energies, who are, they're the Mother Earth. They're the I need a process. So dynamo will say, like, let's have a barbecue, and tempo will be,
let's have a festival.
What are we yeah. Have we got what straws are you using? And then the blaze energy are like, brilliant, I'll invite everyone I've ever met, because they're all about people. Let's do karaoke. And their keyword is who am I with? And they need social proof. You can't move those people unless you've got social proof. And the tempos are different. They need process. Show me the process. Show me your facts and what is it. Around here you've got the steels, and those people are all about data. They're risk averse, so they rain on the parade. So Dynamo says, let's have a barbecue. Steel goes, do you know it's going to rain at 3? And have you even got a gazebo? And so these two don't get on as well as, and there's different pairings. And it's fascinating, but people speak different languages, and they literally will be triggered by different things. And once you know someone's profile, you can talk their language. So I also train salespeople, and I do work with one of the big pharma companies, and I'm sort of putting this into their organization as a natural thing that they do, is to work out how to connect with people in a way that moves them. Because if you can move people, you can move process. It goes that way round. But you have to stop.
Talking about family and friends, I can see that, like in the workplace, if you're an employer, it would be really amazing to bring in some kind of personality profiling.
Yes,
so you can
really
talk to all of your employees in a way that resonates with them. If we're talking about family and friends, is it just a kind of, I can think of my friends and kind of slot them into some of those things. So I guess if we educate ourselves about those different personality types, we can then adapt maybe a little way with.
My firm belief, everyone should do a profile in the world, because it's just so much easier when you understand this difference in, what matters to me doesn't matter to that person. My partner in life is very high steel energy, so he's all about data and facts, and he's what's called a mechanic. Lift the bonnet, fiddle with stuff, mend it, make it better that way. I'm people, I'm blaze dynamo, so I care about the humans behind the story. So there's just a totally different angle, and it's helped our relationship immensely. I insisted he got profiled when I met him. This is a non-negotiable.
First date.
And we can talk each other's language because we know what matters to each other, and that really it's hugely powerful. And and within a team it's great, but within a family, and I do some couples work, it's so bloody powerful to get that understanding, and just because it just makes you understand it's how to talk to people who are not like me. We all know how to talk to people who are our profile. It's innate. We can do that. What we can't do is jump across the divide to those people that care about very different things than we do.
I just want to point out the irony that my youngest just came in and told me to be quiet because they've now got the telly. Virginia, you want to come in?
I was going to say I use exactly the same method to work with my clients, to teach people to read quickly the personality of who they got in front of them without necessarily doing a test.
Yes.
But the one model I use is the DISC method, which obviously, some of you
very similar.
Exactly. So the dominant, the influential, the steady, and the cautious personality. And we broadly fall into these sort of personalities. But once you know that someone is high energy, like you were saying before, they go quickly, they don't want, all the little details, they want to go to the target, then you know that you need to speak their language. Probably is about, so when you're talking about sustainability, so go for the hard facts, go for what they really want to hear. Is it going to help me, make my life better? If not, off they go and you lost them. But if they're, say, the steady personality, then they care about their people, their community, then you can talk more about the ethical stuff. And because I usually work with businesses, so we talk money with the red type of people or the blue type of people, which are the cautious people. They want the data, they want the facts, the figures, the graphs, etc. While we talk about more the social element to others that are less so. So when you speak to family and friends, it's also helpful, I think, to understand more or less what they care about, whether that is, convenience, because, sustainability can be convenient if you fit it in, your lifestyle. It needs a bit of work in that sense, understanding who you got in front of you, but then it become a bit more automatic. And I think the key there is really listen. We don't listen enough. But if you speak to someone and you let them express their views, I'm sure 100% you can find something that will be interested in when we're talking sustainability, because it's so wide-ranging. It might be that, your husband is not particularly keen on the, ethical argument, but maybe he will love a Tesla because it's a gorgeous car. Do you know what I mean? It's like, then you can kill two birds with one stone. Who cares, if he goes for it because of the looks? In the end of the day, it's a sustainable car. So you just need to listen a bit more and try and understand who you got in front of you. And my computer is about to die.
Oh,
8 minutes. I've got 8 minutes.
God, that's good.
And I think also the other thing is quite often it's actually enough just to be the change that you want to see and lead by example, not be preachy, not tell people what they're doing wrong, and just demonstrate what a great fun time you're having and all the things that you're getting to do. And it's amazing how I now get friends messaging me saying, oh, I've bought a bamboo toothbrush and thought of you. I actually don't advocate bamboo toothbrushes, but the sentiment that they thought that's a great idea, and then I've got my reusable soap bar. And and it's just by being that change and being, when people ask you questions like, oh, so how come you don't eat this? I've chosen to do this because of this reason. I choose to do this, and just keep it personal. Don't try and tell other people what to do, because they'll get there in their own time. And with things like the stages of change, and when people are ready for it, there's this whole thing about when people consciously choose to change things, is they have no awareness, first of all. So you could give them a message, not going to resonate. Then they've got a bit of awareness and they're starting to think about it. So, oh, okay, interesting. And then it's at that point when they actually want to make those changes that they need to reinforce them and support them and show them how to do it. But if they're not there yet, preaching at them or telling them off is going to do nothing.
Becky's just put in the comments, she could listen to all of you all day, and I could as well. And just on Livy's point there, Matthew was talking about this in our Where Are All the Men panel yesterday, show, don't tell. And I think that's really, really powerful. Right, let's have a quick look at these questions before Virginia's battery.
I'm going to run into my lead, otherwise it's, I'll come back.
Interesting to hear different brain types. If you're trying to influence large numbers, how can you influence all different types within your communication? Libby, I don't know if you want to come in on that, because you've been talking about brain types.
So I'm a speaker. I go on stage at various different conferences. I've obviously got a room in front of me. I have to impact them. There's a specific pattern that I use to hit all of those buttons. And it really is just a question of connecting with what's important to each of those 4 quadrants. Equally, there's another layer that you put over the top of that. People speak in 3 different modalities. You've got visual, audio, and kinesthetic mode. And so it's important that you give messages in all 3 modalities as well. So being a speaker is actually quite fun, because you have to make sure you're including enough of this. So you have to start, for example, with social proof. You need to position yourself as a voice of authority so that those people that are interested in that are reassured and go, oh, okay. Then you have to move to the how questioners, the steel energies, and you have to tell them how you're going to do it. so that they can relax and go, oh, okay, then you have to move to the tempo energy and tell them the where and the when. So you know you're going to run for 45 minutes and then have a break, and then the dynamos by then are really bored. So you have to go back to them and go again to the what. What we're here to talk about today is where you start, and then you come back to them at the end because they've already lost interest and their brain's whizzing off on 1,000 different. So you have to hit round all the spectrum. So when you're talking to a group of people, either as marketing messages or as a room, yeah, it is a bit of an art to get all of those in, but it's possible and it's really fun, and you do it better when you understand self, when you understand what's important to you, because then you know what you have to work harder at and what you have to develop more. And like Livy says about when people are ready, you need to know what is most likely to be impactful to them to help move them into change. So yeah, but it is absolutely doable.
Robin's asked, and I think Libby, you saw this question earlier and touched on it. A friend of mine's daughter has climate grief and sort of shutting off or feeling hopeless. So, Robin, because we're short of time, I'm going to just skip over that because I think we did touch on that earlier. But I'm sure any of these guys would be happy to chat with you about that. Livy Drake, this seems like a really good one for you. Do you think positive carrot, e.g. a discount for good behaviour, works better than a negative stick, e.g. a charge for bad behaviour, or do we need both?
So there is something called loss aversion, and it's a concept which says that we experience loss twice as much as we experience pleasure. So this is why a latte levy, where you have to pay if you want to use a disposable cup, works better than a discount, because actually a discount doesn't inspire us, whereas losing 5p or 10p or 25p really impacts us. So it unfortunately we do need the taxes and the things that will take stuff away from us, but we also need the feel good and the rewards, which are really important. And so I think probably Libby's got more to say on rewards.
But I think a really important distinction to make there is as you said, that that stick approach shouldn't be shaming people, shouldn't be that's I think really important.
Yeah, there's a difference between pain and shame. Shame is a really toxic emotion, and shame gets linked to guilt. And as soon as you trigger people into shame, and if anyone wants more material on this, I've got loads, because this is something I'm really passionate about. Brené Brown talks a lot about the way we use shame in our bodies. But pain as a motivator is bloody brilliant. That's why we go to the gym. The pain of I can't fit in my jeans and I've got to buy a car is enough to sometimes push behaviours more than the pleasure of I could then fit in my jeans. It's that mix between the two, and it's really important. And we have to understand neuroassociative conditioning works by linking pleasure to the outcomes that you want and the activities and the behaviours and the habits that you want. If you can couple pleasure to that, then you will repeat those behaviours endlessly, more so than the leverage, the pain. The pain actually moves us more as humans, but as soon as you attach pleasure to habits, they become absolutely infallible. Yeah. So that's the key.
Claire's just said, cancel all the other sessions, let's just stay here. Too much gold being delivered. I would love to stay here, and I think we can chat about this all day. Lucy says, do you have experience of people responding to certain elements of sustainability better than others, i.e. plastic-free resonates more with them maybe than switching to green electricity? And if yes, what have you done to try and encourage people to engage or change behaviour around less appealing topics? I'm going to give you all 60 seconds on that one. Virginia, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. We all get attached to one element of sustainability rather than other. Because I've studied sustainability, I know the energy is possibly the most important bit rather than plastic, although plastic is very important. But again, I would say if you try and understand what benefits will bring to the other person to become more sustainable in another area, maybe they don't know enough about it. That's the other thing. Not everyone knows enough about everything, of course. So if you know enough about it, then you can always inform the other person and say, if you do that, actually, I don't know, there are plenty of 100% renewable energy providers now that you can switch to, and you can get £50 back. I don't know whether something, the money element or the saving can resonate to someone who maybe didn't know about that, or prefer to save money rather than not. So I think, again, it goes back to benefits and showing the angle that person can digest better, and definitely educate and inform other people without becoming a preacher, of course. So that's not or been asked, you know, if they ask you, then of course to say that. But if you start preaching, that's not nice.
Yeah. Livy Drake.
So there's lots of interesting studies that have been done around energy, and the best way to get people to change their energy habits is to tell them what people in their street are doing. So they've done this on electricity bills, where they said people in this street use this much energy typically, and these have changed the behaviours. So it's telling people what other people in their social circle are doing. The thing to be aware of with things like plastics and recycling is they're a ceiling behaviour. So people do them and they're like, oh, I've done that. That's enough. Then I'll do something else. Libby.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think it's very interesting to look, and Matt's just put in the comments, social normative theory. And it's, yeah, totally. It's all about what is the acceptable herd behaviour that we can get on board with. Because for me, cloth nappies was my choice. But for some of my friends, they were just like, what are you doing? You know, it wasn't normal to them. And conversely, some of them saw me using cloth nappies and went, oh God, that's really interesting. And so it is about what you see. And it's that thing, if you see it, you can be it. And us at the ground level, the grassroots, little army going out there doing these behaviours can represent to other people a possibility that they may not have thought of before. So, for example, I've got solar panels on my roof. I'm the only house in my village that has. I don't think anyone else has yet wondered at my wisdom and followed suit, but seeing them there will mean that other people could do if they want to, and that's exactly where the behaviour change starts.
And just to pick up on that, and I guess maybe specifically on the point that Livy made about the energy, or more generally, I think this is where another place where we have power. So we change maybe our energy supplier, or we use reusable nappies, but then actually letting people know that we've done that. Because, you know, if you share, even if you share it on your Facebook page, there'll be people who go, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know that was important. Was it easy? And you go, yeah, it was. And we help to normalise these behaviours so much more, don't we? Right, sorry guys, we're running slightly over. Is everyone all right? Just I think there's one more question. Do you rate talking to your MP beyond a click petition? Who's got anything to come in on there? Is any of you?
Regularly. I write to mine all the time. I'm at the stage where I get the pat on the head letter back, you know, and he's a white middle class Tory, so he couldn't be more different. And I think he sees my name come up and just goes, oh, God. And it's just, you know, I won't stop doing those things that I think I can do. Whether they make a damn bit of difference, I don't know. I also sign every petition that I see in the world as well. But does it change their behaviours? I think volume would. I think sheer volume might create some form of influence. But at the moment, I'm not seeing much effect, I've got to be honest.
There was a study, I think, in 2017, which I referenced in another talk, saying that, you know, the reasons given by MPs back then that they weren't taking more action on the climate crisis was because they weren't hearing it was an issue from their constituents. And so actually, you know, I just, you know, you don't have to sit and write a letter, but, you know, if there's an important bill coming up, just tweet them, say, how are you planning to vote on this? I'd really love to hear from you. I'd really appreciate you listening to my views on this, or something like that. It doesn't have to be this big onerous kind of handwritten letter thing. Virginia, you're nodding along. How about you?
No, I don't write to my MP, but I like the idea of tweeting because, you know, there is a public show of, you know, of support to a cause or another, and I do sign every petition going around. So I don't know, and I agree, like I was saying before, with Libby saying, you know, you are one person, but if you sort of join up with others that think the same way, and that is the petition or the tweets or whatever, then I'm sure it makes a difference, because it's, you know, they will wake up and say, well, actually 100 people this week wrote or tweet about this, and I should do something about it. And if it becomes personal to them, then probably they will start doing something. And it has to be reconnected to them as well. It has to make sense for them to do the action.
Go for it, Livy.
So I think one of the things that we have noticed in the last few years, 10, 15, well, we've got lots of politicians who don't care about the environment, aren't doing anything. Have we had loads of change? Yes. And why? Because people have been lobbying businesses, and they've been lobbying big business. And the plastics movement has been at business, and then the government has responded. So we need to be tweeting, messaging, emailing, signing petitions to everybody. But for me, where I've kind of felt, felt completely disheartened and felt a bit hopeless when we had another Conservative 5-year tenure, I thought, what are we going to do? And it's like, focus on businesses, because businesses care about what their customers think, and that's where there's been a lot more movement. So I would say contact all of them, but if you've only got 5 minutes, focus on those companies.
Yeah, and we talked about this in the Everyday Activism panel, and that this clicktivism, signing online petitions gets a bit of a bad rap, doesn't it? But you look at the City to Sea campaign with the Switch the Stick, that forced supermarkets to change earbuds to cardboard inners rather than plastic. Ella Daish was on that panel. She's got 200,000 signatures on her Plastic Free Periods petition, and she is now engaging with Tampax, with Lillette's, with all these different companies, and engaging with them about the changes that they can make. So, never think that there's no point kind of signing a petition. It really is a powerful thing. Right, I think that was all the questions. Let me just... recently tweeted Tesco's regarding Argentina apples, but got no response. I think sometimes, I would, keep on at them, ask for a response. Most of them are quite responsive now on social media, because they're aware it's a very public platform and people can see that they're not responding or they're being evasive. Guys, this has been absolutely amazing. And as everyone said, we could talk about this all day. Just want to go around each of you, if you can share where we can find you, where we can come and engage with you more. But maybe like one top tip or one action that people can do as a result of, we've talked about a lot of real heavy brain stuff. What's something that we can really actively take away from this and do? So, Libby, do you want to start? You've popped your link in already. Very organised.
Yeah, my link's in the comments. If anyone wants a profile, I think that's the most help I can be to everyone, because all of you here have, by being here, self-selected as being people that give a shit, which is brilliant. And so I'm really passionate about getting this tech out into the world more. So if you want a profile, I'm happy to do a half price if you just quote Sustainable-ish or Jen's name. So drop me an email on that one. Really happy to do Sound Dynamics profile for anyone that wants one. So I can be got at libby@kimcaron.com. And I'm also doing 10 minutes a day. For those of you that have enjoyed this sort of stuff that I've been talking about, I'm filming a litter of kittens growing up on my Facebook page for 10 minutes a day to calm the circuits. We all need more oxytocin right now. We're living in adrenaline and we need to come out of that. So I'm filming this litter of kittens and I'm talking over the top with some little tips and tweaks that you can do really easily from home. And especially, guys, if you've got kids that you think are struggling right now, sign in every day. I'm on at 5 p.m. and watch some fairy kittens with them, because I'm drip feeding some useful growth mindset, brain behaviour stuff that might or might not help, but I'd love to see.
They're your kittens?
I'm fostering, so we've got a lot of throwaway cats at the moment. We're at 3 times capacity in our rescues.
Wow. People
can't cope, and so I've got 2 mummy cats, 3 kittens with 1 mummy, 5 kittens with another mummy. Wow. And so I'm covered in cats. It's the best lockdown strategy ever. My kids don't know there's a lockdown. They just think we're having like an extended kitten holiday. It's brilliant.
Oh, Libby's disappeared again, but she's popped her.
She's put her link in.
She's popped her link in there, and she's got. I think she said on another post it was a 20% discount for her course, which is all around reducing plastics and things. So do go and check out Libby on sustainablesidekicks.com. And Virginia, have you got where can we find you and an action for us all to do?
Yeah, I put my link in there, thegreengorilla.co.uk, or if you are on LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn. The other platforms are not so much, but I work a lot with sustainability professionals. So if anyone I've seen some people I know actually in the list. So I'm starting a new mastermind to tackle all the soft skills that you need to become a successful sustainability professional in June. And so if you just go on my website, there are more information about the mastermind group, which is great. I'm enjoying working with these people to grow their skills collectively. And I also wrote a book, if anyone is vaguely interested. It's called Sustainable: How to Find Success as a Sustainability Professional in a rapidly changing world. Sorry, it's a bit of a mouthful, But that's the thing. Tips. I would say start from what you like. Start from something that you are passionate about. If it's plastic, if it's energy, if it's reusable nappies or whatever, or reusable feminine products, I love them. Do you know, why not? And then, like you say, just talk, casually to others about it, and maybe they will ask you more. And, you will have converted one person without being preachy.
Yeah, brilliant. There's so much good stuff in this, guys. This will all be on the replay pretty much as soon as we end. So, do share this if you've got friends and family or colleagues you think this would resonate with. Livy Drake's course is Tackling Behaviour Change in the Workplace, and she's popped, you can find her on LinkedIn as well. All these links that are in the chat will still be there on the replay if you want to come back and scroll through and find them. So that's a really helpful thing. And just to say again, we're all about action and imperfect action with the festival. So in the call to action thing on there, I've popped the, I thought I had, I don't know if I have. If I haven't, I'll share it again. There's a pledge page that we've got up, a pledge wall. There's over 50 on there at the moment. So come and, share your pledges and share the changes that you're going to make. And thank you, guys. Thank you so much. I know we've gone over time, but this was absolutely fascinating. I think we've all been glued to our seats. Thank you so much. And might see some of you guys at 12:30. We're talking reusable nappies with Laura. So take care. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks.